in his face. Like, oh, stay away. Thanks for that, Jeff. International Workers' Day presents a welcome public holiday for many, but perhaps we should all use the time to reflect on the reality faced by workers here at home. Poor working conditions, inequalities and a lack of job security are still rampant. So what are the new challenges facing the working class and how do we resolve them? Joining me now is General Secretary of Solidarity, Jane Dutton, from our Durban studio is SAFTU General Secretary Zwelinzima Vavi, and from our Cape Town studio is Matthew Parks from COSATU. Good evening, all of you. Let me start off with you, Mr. Vavi. I mean, I know you have been very outspoken today about the miners. There was a tragedy yesterday with miners trapped underground. It's happening all too often, isn't it? What's going wrong here?
Well, when you have a capitalist system that prioritizes profit at all cost at the expense of the safety of the workers, you will always have tragedies. In particular, when your legislation, excuse me, falls short of punishing at a personal and individual level the executives that are managing these mines. We have always advocated a position that says whenever there is a death and whenever there's a tragedy, the leadership of the mine, from the management point of view, must be held personally accountable and must serve prison for the deaths, for the injuries, and for the pain that the workers are suffering. But we were lucky yesterday, isn't it? There was a big scare that 1,800 workers were trapped underground, and then we were relieved later by the news that no, there was just a difficulty and workers were safe and were safely brought into the surface.
Yes, I mean, everyone's happy that we had a good ending. Matthew Parks, I mean, when you see what's happening in mines, it really is indicative of how workers are still sadly viewed. Matthew Parks?
Who really don't care about workers' lives. We've got progressive laws, but we don't have a commitment, a will, a sense of urgency from government to simply enforce them. Whilst mining accidents have decreased significantly, what happened yesterday really is an example of how government needs to get off its backside and start enforcing the law. We need to see mining executives going to prison, mining houses being fined. You can't have this situation where 1,800 workers were trapped for hours underground. It's quite a shocking scandal.
Jane Dutton, what do you think is going wrong there? I mean, is it still a case of workers' rights being ignored? Is it a capitalist problem, as Mr. Vavi said?
Well, I agree with a lot of what ZV said, but you must also remember there are positives. You talk about 133 years ago, the commencement of May Day, and that was also when gold was discovered in this country and the importance of the gold mining industry. And if we look at how trade unions negotiated side by side for the mining charter, where AMCU, the NUM, who are rival unions, Solidarity, UHASA, and yesterday we saw the result of it, where West Coal then offer 50% shareholders to their workers, and those are the kind of successes that we also have. But when it comes to the mining industry on the fatalities, our big issue there are the production bonuses. So the mining executives, they get a specific bonus if specific targets are getting, if the workers meet a specific target. So now the workers work under circumstances when they're under pressure. They cut corners because they have to meet specific targets, and then you get these mining fatalities. So production bonuses are the one thing you need to look at. But then on the other hand, workers must also look, is this a time for going a 5-month strike where a gold mine is busy retrenching 6,000 employees? And so we need to have that debate amongst the working class as well.
Yeah, there needs to be a lot of conversation, doesn't it? I mean, President Cyril Ramaphosa, he was out today, obviously, and he lashed out at employers who exploit women in the workplace. And he was speaking during COSATU's May Day rally in Claremont outside Durban.
The continuing discrimination and exploitation against women must also be brought to an end, because we are still finding that there is continued discrimination and exploitation against women in many working areas in our country, and we say this must be brought to an end, and we call upon all sectors of society to join the struggle to empower the women of our country. And we will continue to fight against patriarchy in all forms and manifestations.
Matthew Parks, how do we change this? How do we raise the status of women? I mean, it's a conversation that we have all the time. It seems that it's taking too long. What role for the unions here?
Sure, look, unions need to be on the ground. They need to recruit members. They need to take up their interests and be militant. The example of women and the abuse they suffer at the workplace is a critical example. Most women face serious sexual harassment, physical abuse, even rape at the workplace. So as unions, we really need to champion that. We need to recruit women. We need to take up the issues with the Department of Labour, with the employers, with the police. Equally, business must also come to the party.
Surrounded by men, which is often the case when I speak to unions. I mean, when is that going to change?
Look, as COSATU, we've taken it seriously. We're the first trade union federation now to have a woman as president. We've got much more work to do. We recently adopted a sexual harassment code of conduct for ourselves as well. But really, there's much, much, much more work we need to do as unions, as society at large, to champion women's rights, something we've all neglected for far too long. There's huge things we need to do. We've got good policies, good laws, but really the proof of the pudding is to see those being implemented on the ground. And
Gideon du Plessis, are unions in a position to tackle this important issue? I mean, you empower the woman, you empower the entire family, you empower society. It's a no-brainer.
The trick is, whatever you do, that sector must be regulated. I want to come back to the mining industry. There's a Women in Mining initiative driven by all the social partners, but in the mining charter, there are specific targets set for the appointment and all different levels, for skills development, for all the key issues where you need to enhance and empower women. That's in the charter, and that's the key thing. There are various charters for every economic sector, and if it's not regulated, then it will not happen. And that is the thing. You know, you need, for each and every sector, you need to have it unionized, and then the next step for the unions will be to put it on the agenda and to achieve what we achieved in the mining industry, where we really are empowering women, and you can physically see it.
Zwelithini Vavi, are unions still relevant today? I mean, you look at, and it's across the board here, unions are losing followers. They're losing their supporters in large numbers.
There is no doubt in our mind that the trade union movement is much more needed in the economy than any other time in its history. Look at what is happening. Even the examples about the prevalence of cases of abuse, sexual harassment against cases require a strong trade union movement. There is a rush, a race to the bottom in our country, where there's a destruction of quality jobs, and they are being replaced at an alarming rate by precarious forms of employment. Casualization of workers in our retail chains, Pick and Pay, all of them combined, is now chasing 100%, with a smaller number of workers remaining with secure, more permanent jobs with benefits such as maternity benefits, maternity leave benefits rather, and pension, provident fund, and medical aid. Across the level, we're facing an unprecedented level of unemployment. And when unemployment hit the rate where, in terms of youth unemployment, we've become the most or number one in the whole world, the power relation shifts towards the employer, because the employer will always use the fact that there's 10 million people who are outside the factories readily wanting to come in at all cost. as an important bargaining chip to keep the wages of the rest of the workers
I'm
in
going
the
to interrupt you there.
very down.
I just want to get a last question in very quickly to Matthew Parks. I mean, do you think unions are becoming obsolete, and do you think the problem with your union is that you're just too closely aligned to politics, and your supporters or your members feel that you're not having them in their best interest or putting them forward for their best interests?
No, not at all. Look, the challenges facing workers are massive. 37% of workers are unemployed. Thousands of workers are threatened with retrenchment. We have collapsing public services, corruption, etc. It's a need for workers to unite, not just to join unions, but for unions themselves to unite to combat these struggles together. We've seen when workers are united, they've had massive successes, not just in the defeat of apartheid, the liberation of South Africa, but more recently in our progressive labour laws, the achievement of a minimum wage, the achievement of maternity and paternity leave, and even the defeat of the recent corrupt president, President Zuma. We've seen how workers have led the struggle against e-tolls and defeated it. But look, we need workers now to be united to take forward the struggles against unemployment, against retrenchments, to achieve a national health insurance. We can't blame workers for the failures of capitalism. The challenge is for workers to unite to defeat those obstacles.
All right, let's leave it there. Matthew Parks, Zwelin Zema, Vavian, Gideon du Plessis. Thank you very much. That's our show for tonight. News is next.